Thanks to Howard for the work he's done on this. Also thanks to Thomas Hanna, I'm a colleague at Democracy Collaborative, did work on this. Joe Guinan, the president of Democracy Collaborative, worked on this, as well as Joanna and Ben, who's worked on this too. You know, a labour of love, particularly from Howard. So Howard, you did, it was great stuff you've done here. And also thanks to Chase and to Matthew for this. I'm Neil McInroy, the global lead for community wealth building with the Democracy Collaborative. We are a USA-based think and do tank based in Cleveland, Ohio and DC. We're basically about building a democratic economy. That means research and policy, it means activism, and also means a whole range of applied work across the USA and beyond. I am the global lead. My work is about, I live in the West Highlands of Scotland, but travel to the United States quite a lot. 50% of my work is in the United States, about 10% is UK, and the rest is kind of global. And community wealth building is a growing movement. South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA, and I kind of sit trying to work all that out. It's also worth saying that, just to start off, unusually, I've actually written a bit of a speech, which is not usual, you just extrapolate without notes, but I've got some notes here, so let me go through this. It's important just to say, first of all, that this is a systemic crisis, not a policy blip. What the index shows is not just a difficult period, not just policy failure, not even just a series of crises. It shows us a system that is failing consistently, predictably, and by design. So just get your head around that. Okay? Long-standing failings. The indicators that what Howard and ourselves have put together are flashing red. The warning lights are blinking fiercely. And we need to be honest, dig deep into what that really means. This is not drift. This is direction. And unless we change direction, the outcomes will not change. It's shit. We're heading for the rocks. If you look at some of the fundamentals that Howard put out there, stagnant growth, child poverty rising, housing pressures at historic highs, deep regional inequality, these are not isolated. They are produced by a system, a deliberate system, an intentional system that extracts and concentrates wealth and power and prioritises capital over place, people, communities, and over ecology. And crucially for politicians and people influencing politicians, these trends persist regardless of who is in the UK government or in number 10. We did not produce this index just to describe the pain, though it does. Anybody can do that. We brought this evidence together to show the depth of change required to alter a direction of travel. Systemic crisis, let's wake up, we need to do something serious to us crashing into the rocks. Because modest thinking will not do it, and modest policy will not do it. A handful of big programmes, proclamation from politicians trying to take the rough edges of it off the pain will not help, will not work. And certainly not warm words we hear at the moment in the UK about breaking with neoliberalism, but with no real systemic follow through. And now, warm words, long-standing systemic failures are colliding with something even bigger. I'm a cheery Scotty. We are in actually an era of climate breakdown, geopolitical fragmentation, technological disruption, global economic restructuring. And in the face of all that, the trends are telling us that the UK, as Howard said, lacks fundamental resilience. Our UK system is not designed to absorb any of those shocks. In short, it's brittle, overexposed to global capital, underrooted in place, weak democratic foundations, and a hollowed out productive base. Now, in that context, we also maybe need to look at the prevailing policy response, particularly from an economic perspective. Local, regional and national policy. Let's be frank, talk of devolution, talk of city regions, talk of redistribution. It's playing within an outdated playbook. Attract investment, growth, 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 competition between places for footloose, peripatetic global capital that's hypermobile, come today, leave tomorrow. Some critique of trickle-down and trickle-out economics, but a retained adherence to big capital and big finance. And let's be clear about the imperatives of big finance. It's wealth torrenting upwards to them and to offshore bank accounts. 5 of the biggest tech giants in the USA contribute the same GDP as the British Empire did. The British Empire wasn't great, at least there was some semblance of democratic control over it. That's a key element of the systemic crisis we're talking about here. So what do politicians and policies do? What do we hear in the morass of language and chat? We hear we manage decline, soften the blows, chase opportunities, but we never really build true local or democratic power. And this takes us deeper still. This is not just an economic crisis. This goes to the nub of it. It's a democratic one. People can vote. Sometimes, though turnouts are pathetic, including for our city regional mayors. Yeah. People can vote, but they cannot meaningfully shape ownership, capital flows, or the purpose of the economy. And what that does is, there's a dissonance between democracy, where there's basically apathy, yeah, and power and wealth. There's a dissonance, a gap. We've got democracy in the ballot box, but not in the economy. And that profound inertia is at the heart of the UK state. What we have here is a Westminster gravitational pull. Westminster, let's be frank, is sluggish, gloopy, resistant to change. And an establishment that, frankly, it looks back more than forward. It avoids the systemic crisis rather than digging into them. It seeks to preserve more than it seeks to create, and works to protect more than it dares to prospect. And all of that, with that dissonance and that gap, it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's not dealing with a systemic crisis, but it's deeply dangerous. Really, really dangerous. Because how's that gap filled? How's it being filled? Yeah. It's being filled by a pain, real pain that people feel, genuine pain, and a growing many looking for simple answers in that pain. When you suffer pain, social pain, real hardship, some of the hardship that Sally was talking about, you go, I need out of this quick. I need some simple answers. Where are the answers? This is where it's deeply dangerous. The big answers are coming from a troop of far-right activists and complicit political parties who seize on that. Political parties and politicians who blame the poor, those on welfare, and migrants, or petty waving of flags. A deflection from their own privilege and access to the selfish economy and the support, and what they support and are part of. However, across these islands, there is many little utopias, there's many good things happening. I would say the rise of a civic nationalism in Scotland, Wales and Ireland, and demands for more local power in English regions is a good thing. That reflects something. It's not powerful enough, it reflects something. It reflects a growing demand for control, for voice, and a different economic future than Westminster can provide, or is ever likely to provide. And in Scotland particularly, where I'm from, that's been expressed economically. We do have the rise of community wealth building in Scotland. It's embedded in national policy and legislation to build a well-being economy. It's starting to dig into these systemic crises. It's starting to say, let's have a new imagination of what our economy could be and how we, the people, have more of a stake in it. That is when community wealth building comes into big view here. It's not just policy, it's a systemic response. It rewires the economy around local ownership, democratic control and rooted wealth. And that is the only way out of the systemic crisis, I would argue, and I think that's what the evidence is telling us. Where the system is brittle, we need to build resilience. Where it extracts, we need to retain value. Where it concentrates, we need to distribute. And when it disempowers, we need to democratise. Democracy Collaborative and my colleagues are clear. We're not just diagnosing the system, we're helping to build the next one. A democratic economy where wealth is widely owned, power is shared, and economies serve people, place and planet. We do that, I won't bore you, but we do this through an intentional theory of change, through our founder Gar Alprovitz, where we build, scale and connect. We look to build little utopias that actually start to create the systemic change, community wealth being one of that. So where does this leave us? The UK index shows us a system in decline. It lacks the resilience needed for a future. So aligned for a plea for realism, real realism, not delusion. What we have in this index is a fixed pattern, not a short-term blip. And that pattern means we can't rely on the same playbook, we can't trust that growth will somehow trickle down, and that capital will start behaving differently with some nice noises made towards them. The mild reformist redistributive policy of the post-war social contract is a busted flush. That idea is not... So frankly what I'm saying, and what my colleague, we wrote a piece with Joe Guinan, the TDC president, we've dubbed the moment we're in as a delusional moment. A delusion that we can somehow manage systemic failure with marginal change. A delusion that the same structures that produced extraction will somehow produce inclusion. A delusion that democracy can survive when it's absent from the economy itself. We have to try something different, or risk giving up this country to a Trumpian far-right future. And we know what the future is. It's hard, there's no easy answers, but we know what the future is. It's change ownership, it's economic democracy, it's displaced private extraction with public circulation. And we come back to the first principles that this work was founded upon. Systemic crisis demands a systemic response. That means a fundamental democratic and economic shift from extraction to retention, from concentration to redistribution, from footloose capital to rooted wealth that we have a stake in, from distant control to democratic ownership, from brittle growth to resilient economies. It means recognising, full on, straight in the face, staring straight at it, ownership matters, control matters, and place matters. It means building an economy where people are not just participants in it, subject to the economy around them, but active decision makers. That is why the idea of community wealth building matters, because this is not about policy adjustment, not mild social democratic change. It's about system change, fundamentally. Thanks very much, and we look forward to